Thank you very much for coming for what is going to be, I think, an extremely interesting and important hearing. And I want to thank everybody for being here, especially the witnesses who are taking time from very busy schedules and have come from different parts of the country. The reason that I called this hearing this morning is that the issue that we are discussing today gets far too little public discussion. It's something I just wanted to bring up and get out before the public. It is very rarely talked about in the media, and it's talked about even less in Congress, yet it is one of the great economic and, more importantly, moral issues facing our country. Today, there are nearly 44 million Americans living below the poverty line, and that is the largest number on record. Since the year 2000, nearly 12 million more Americans have slipped into poverty. Now, I understand that generally from a political point of view, it's not terribly wise to be talking about poverty. Poor people don't vote in many cases. Poor people certainly do not make campaign contributions. So from a political point of view, we kind of push them aside as not being relevant. But that's not what I think this country is supposed to be about. According to the latest figures that I have seen from the OECD, and that's the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the United States has both the highest overall poverty rate and the highest childhood poverty rate of any major industrialized country on earth. This also comes at a time when the United States has by far the most unequal distribution of wealth and income of any major country on earth, with the top 1% earning more income than the bottom 50%, top 400 individuals owning more wealth than the bottom 150 million Americans. According to the latest figures from the OECD, published in April 2011, 21.6% of American children live in poverty. This compares to 3.6% in Denmark, 5.2% in Finland, 5.8% in Norway, 6.7% in Iceland, etc., etc., etc. I suppose we can take some comfort in that our childhood poverty rates are not quite as bad as Turkey, 23.5%, and Mexico, 25.8%. When we talk about poverty in America, I think a lot of thoughts go through our minds. We think about people who may be living in substandard housing, maybe they're homeless. We think about people who live with food insecurity and worry about how they're going to feed their families today or tomorrow. We think about people who, in states like mine, where the weather gets very cold, are worrying right now how they stay warm in the coming winter. We think about people who cannot afford health insurance or access to medical care. We think about people who cannot afford an automobile or transportation to get to work or get to a grocery store. We think about senior citizens who often have to make a choice between buying prescription drugs or the groceries they need. Today, however, I want to focus on one enormously important point, and that is that poverty in America leads not just to anxiety, it leads not just to unhappiness or discomfort or a lack of material goods. It leads to death. Poverty in America is, in fact, a death sentence, and tens of thousands of our people are experiencing that reality. Let me just toss out some facts. At a time when, as everybody knows, we are seeing major medical breakthroughs in cancer and other terrible diseases for the people who can afford those treatments, the reality is that life expectancy for low-income women has declined over the past 20 years in 313 counties in our country. Women are dying at a younger age than they used to. In America today, people in the highest income group level, the top 20%, live on average at least 6.5 years longer than those in the lowest income group. 6.5 years. If you are poor in America, you will live 6.5 years less than if you're wealthy or upper middle class. In America today, adult men and women who have graduated from college can expect to live at least 5 years longer than people who have not finished high school. In America today, tens of thousands of our fellow citizens die unnecessarily because they cannot get the medical care they need. According to Reuters, September 17, 2009, quote, nearly 45,000 people die in the United States each year, 1 every 12 minutes, in large part because they lack health insurance and cannot get good care, Harvard Medical School researchers found in an analysis released on Thursday. That's dated September 17, 2009. 45,000 Americans die because they cannot get good medical care. In 2009, the infant mortality rate for African American infants was twice that of white infants. Now, I recite these facts because I believe that as bad as the current situation is with regard to poverty, it will likely get worse in the immediate future. As a result of the greed and recklessness and illegal behavior of Wall Street, we are now, as all of you know, in the worst recession since the Great Depression of the 1930s. Millions of workers have lost their jobs and have slipped out of the middle class and into poverty. Further, despite the reality that our deficit problem has been caused by the recession and the declining revenue, 2 unpaid wars and tax breaks for the very wealthy, there are some in Congress who wish to decimate the existing safety net, which provides a modicum of security for the elderly, the sick, the children, and lower-income people. Despite an increased poverty, there are some people in Congress who would like to cut or end Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, LIHEAP, nutrition programs, and help for the disabled and the elderly. To the degree that they are successful, there is no question in my mind that many more thousands of Americans will die earlier than they should. In other words, they are being sentenced to death without having committed any crime other than being poor. What is especially tragic and reprehensible is that with the kind of childhood poverty rates we are seeing today, unless we turn this vicious circle around, we are dooming a significant part of an entire future generation to unnecessary suffering and premature death. This is not what America is supposed to be about, and we must not allow that to happen.